else is just here because they're interested. Excellent. So I assume that the majority of the people who have at least worked with UX recognizes that this is a level of success. So being able to deliver workflows, wireframes, interaction design, and working from a set of user stories in order to actually define what the experience is going to be. And so working from left to right, we're moving from more abstract to more concrete definition of what the experience is going to be like. Okay. So this is possibly another way of defining success. Does anyone work with a development team to deliver software in an agile fashion? Okay. What does everyone else do? No, seriously, what does everyone else do? How do you guys? Iteratively. So that's a little bit to do with the way, the agile approach and being able to waterfall. Never heard that one before. So this is another way of measuring success. It's delivering working software. Okay, next. There's one thing missing from here. But this is another way of measuring success. It's whether or not your business is actually still alive. So a lot of the businesses in the first row have been substituted by the ones below, and the one that's supposed to be below Tower Records is iTunes. Is it about delivering successful design assets? Is it about actually delivering the software, or is it about creating a successful product and making sure that the business that you're solving the problem for is successful? And also, can you measure how many people think right now in this room you can measure the success of UX and you can convincingly have a conversation with stakeholders, with other people in your team, that actually you should listen to us, we know the customer, we understand the business needs, and we can create an experience that is going to be really awesome. How many people feel confident that they can do that? Not that many. I would say 10% of the audience. So if you go to the next screen, Simon. So I'm on a bit of a mission to try and re-educate businesses, re-educate in order to highlight that actually. So here's just some examples. I'm not going to deep dive into. We have about another 10 more minutes, but I just wanted to show that by sticking your neck out there and actually saying that we can deliver better designs and actually make a business KPI success more successful, and then be able to measure it and prove that you're right, goes a long way towards credibility, being able to justify why you want a certain interaction to happen or a certain set of wireframes to flow in a certain way. So there is a way of measuring success. And this is just some examples of when I was working at Sky, and now TV being part of Sky, that we were able to measure that. I can come back to these screens perhaps at the panel discussion or later on. Okay, Simon. But the case study that I wanted to talk to you about today is something that I'm working on right now. And it's very much to do, sometimes it's very difficult to actually do enough data analysis or research to find out, what is the problem, and can I measure what that problem is in order to improve that problem, with a number. So what happens when there just isn't enough to go on? So here's the case study, which I'm going to rattle through in the next 8 or 9 minutes. Okay. So the problem is, I'm working for a company right now that is trying to disrupt the travel airline industry. They have a mission to try and make it. They feel like they can make money out of being able to provide better experiences for travelers who want to travel on airlines. And we all know that, I don't know if you guys have felt frustrated when you've been traveling on airlines before, but I always feel that there could be a better way, a more delightful way of being able to engage with an airline, engage with the travel experience, and actually get more out of it. Okay. So the company that I'm consulting into right now is called Inc. They feel like that there might be an opportunity here to actually do the right thing, create better customer experiences, and monetize it at the same time. The reason why they think they can do that and they're in a good position is because they, at the moment, have 35 airlines that they're currently delivering content, and content in the form of written content in travel brochures, and they also deliver advertising onto the boarding passes. So they're doing that very, very successfully right now. So at one level, that level of success has been very good for the company, but now they're getting more and more of these airlines approaching them and asking them whether or not it would be possible to engage their customers more and deliver mobile experiences. So if you imagine knowing passenger information, there being a need to connect up travel experiences, and then be able to make some money, so the return on investment of it has to be some sort of profit. And they really see UX as being key to the success of this project. Okay, so this slide is meant to be all-encompassing. So the big vision is that, is it possible to really understand passengers or travelers at different moments in time? So when they're thinking about traveling, when they're not even really thinking about it, but they could be nudged along into something that could be interesting. So it's all about, how do we design digital experiences? How do we engage with them in real 3D environments? But then also understanding that there's a time factor. So there's a time factor when it's probably more it's okay to approach them versus certain times when they're just not that interested. So how do we find that sweet spot right in the middle? So the opportunity is massive. So we're talking about monetizing through mobile advertising. We know that there are people looking at or using mobile devices, and we know that advertisers aren't quite engaging people who want to be engaged when they have mobile experiences. They're not spending enough money. There just aren't enough eyeballs there. And we know that with mobile, it's a much more personal experience. You carry it around with you. You tend to treat it as your second brain. So there's a real opportunity there to really connect with the travelers. So just coming back to the whole idea of metrics-driven design, how do we even start to think about what the right thing is to do? So this is a very simple example of how, with this type of data, which I'm going to tell you what this data is in a second, with just minimal data, you can start to build out a real empathy for who your travelers are, what the business needs are, and then be able to join the dots and then deliver real impact. So this is a snapshot of data in an Excel sheet. How many people here have looked at data in an Excel sheet and tried to decipher the value or look at any patterns within data that are just numbers across time, across different persona types, to try and figure out is there a pattern there that we can look at and actually delve into it and make something of? So just raise your hands again. Has it been easy? And have you guys done it yourselves, or do you rely on data scientists? Do you rely on other people to give you an interpretation of that data? How many people rely on other people to give them an interpretation of what that data might be? How many people actually do that research themselves? Okay. So you might not be that unfamiliar with what I'm going to be talking to you about, but I wanted to use this as an example. So imagine a business traveler. I need to point at one of these screens. And you can see here that the big number represents that actually there's a pattern there. There's something going on there that actually is more than the norm. So we should take notice of it. So taking notice of the fact that the business traveler actually does a lot of research within 7 days of their travel is an interesting fact. So if you take that fact and you move on to the next screen, you can see that when you're building out personas, this is a very recent persona type that I've tried to create, you can see that by understanding that they book travel within 7 days in advance, we can actually allocate a metric or a number to that. And we can use that number to build out their personality. So understanding that means that perhaps as an assumption, they might be a last-minute business trip planner. And in order to create some value out of that knowledge, I'm going to focus on this concept of success, measurable success, where you would create outputs, outcomes, and impacts. Does anyone know what outputs, outcomes, and impacts are? The difference between the three? Can you put your hand up if you do? Okay, so what's a... You guys will know. Someone over there put up their hand. No? Okay, what's an outcome? Give me an example of an outcome and a difference between an outcome and an output.
So an output would be
a hamburger. Okay, an output could be it's a physical finished piece of something. It could be software. It could be a product. Okay.
An outcome is the experience of the meal, the way the person has.
Right. Okay, so it's the immediate benefit of, let's say. My variation on it. Sorry, Simon, next screen. So you're right. So output is about the deliverable. So if it's software design, it's the feature. The outcome is the immediate benefit of that feature. So if it was a drop-down box, maybe the immediate benefit is to be able to select something from a list. And the impact could be that you can execute something that would actually provide some sort of big benefit KPI for the business. Next. So create these assumptions by putting the output, outcome, and impact together. So if you remember the persona of the business traveler, you can see that by creating something like a deal alert, we can make the assumption that we can improve or increase visits to that deal section, and then ultimately make money through advertising that has been advertised on that deal page. This is a very simplified version of how we can measure success. Okay. But what do we do first? So next, we can value the size or the importance of the return on investment of that feature or that output. So the output is deal alerts, and you can see down in the bottom left, there are different ways of calculating value, but it could be, customer value times the number of personas that value is actually applicable to. It could be business value in terms of value to Inc. as a company. It could be business value to, which could be the value to the airline company. It could be over times ease of implementation, and then there could be a dependency value as well. So sometimes you need to build one of these outputs in order to deliver more outputs. So this is just a simple way of being able to map value to an output. Next. And then you can see that by creating, once you understand the user, when we understand that there's a real need and there's a metric that can be measured and that there's real value in delivering that output or feature, you can start to more successfully persuade people through your wireframes, for example, of the value of each one of those features. So by creating this deal alert, we know that if it proves to be successful, that it's going to be a good idea to build. So once we know that, we can start to build out the rest of the experience. So it could be the notification settings that would allow the push alerts to be executed, and then we could have alerts within the actual application itself, which would lead through to the outcome, which is the click to the deal, and then the impact being there's an advertising on there, and one of the measurements of success for that advertising being on there can be the CPM, which is the impressions that they're actually getting. Okay. What more can we measure? Okay, next. So there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we can measure in order to differentiate and improve the metrics that we're getting for each of the features and outputs that we're creating. Here is some very real information that we can gather from just the passenger being a traveler on an airline. And there's other stuff like implicit click path analysis, page views, through to explicit stuff like actually making a booking or executing the search, through to some really, really interesting AI machine learning, sentence analysis, and mood analysis. Okay. Let's skip past this one. It's an example of a questionnaire. But what about making money? So ultimately, the big impact and the big KPI goal is to actually monetize this advertising system that you can layer on top of an airline booking system. So the next screen. So what I've created for Inc. is a way of actually being able to measure the success of each one of the ideas, the outputs that we're creating across a customer experience map. So I think we'll be able to share some of these slides, but it's a very holistic end-to-end experience where you start off with a notification, you come in, you start browsing, doing a bit more research, then you do some inquiry, and then you go through to the actual booking process, through to socializing it on social networks, and then checking flight updates, and then being able to look at your boarding pass. So there's a whole bunch. All of those screens there actually represent potential areas where we can actually push really useful services to the traveler. So it all kind of joins together, and it makes it a lot easier to actually justify why each one of these different experiences, each one of these different outputs is actually of value to the business. Okay, next. And here are some more examples for a different airline that we're working for. And then the next screen. I think it's near the end. But don't forget to experiment. So I'm a big believer in rapid ideation, lean startup techniques, guerrilla usability. So the next screen really is just about, Eric Ries talks about it a lot, but having those assumptions, but being able to validate it with an MVP. It's very important to have an idea of the impact, so the output you're creating, the outcome, the immediate benefit, and then the ultimate impact that you're trying to create as business value that you're delivering. But it's all just pie in the sky unless you can actually create that minimum viable product and test it. So I think it's very important not to just know what the metric is, have a stab at what the output is, know what the impact is if you don't test it. Okay. So in conclusion, make sure you understand that there is a real problem and a goal. Identify the real opportunities for success. Analyze the data. Remember, success can be made out of outputs, which is the features, outcomes, which is the immediate benefit, and then the impact. Have a guess. Make some assumptions. Make sure that you understand your persona types and run them through that metrics-driven way of actually creating personas. Value each one of the outputs and make sure that they are actually the ones you should be working on. Make sure each one of those outputs is within the wireframes. Track and capture even more information about usage. And then if there's a way of monetizing it, then great. And make sure you test it. I think that's it. I think questions later?
I'm going to make an executive decision that I don't often make. First question.
Okay, there are questions. Okay.
The executive decision is I'm asking a question when a student, because we'll have a Q&A at the end. But if you don't mind talking us a little bit about the process and where does Agile come in. So I was thinking, for example, you said you did some research, whether it was a survey. What was it? When did you do it within the process? How did it fit in within the Agile kind of methodology that you were following? Maybe talk a little bit about the technical development. When did that come in? How did you work with the different teams, whether it was researchers or developers? What was the agility, if you like?
There's a lot of questions there.
Just a couple of minutes. I'm sure there'll be more questions.
I think the important thing to understand is that everything that I've shown you, I could be wrong, because until you validate it, it all looks great because it all hangs together. I can go oh yeah, we've had a guess at what the this persona actually wants to be able to do, and here's an output that we think will actually solve that problem and improve a metric. But until you build out a prototype, whatever fidelity, and test it, it's very difficult still to have an argument with the development team, with stakeholders, and say, yeah, we should build this. So it's weird that we ended with experimentation, but that's actually one of the most important things. So getting the team bought into this idea of metrics-driven design so that they appreciate that you're actually not just making stuff up because you want to create an experience that is really delightful, but is shallow. Right? Metrics-driven design just means that you can actually back it up with, it will have real value to a business at some point.
Thanks. Sorry about that. We're going to have a Q&A with more questions after.